Our next guest, he's a CEO and a financial advisor to heads of state. His family came to Texas with Stephen F. Austin in 1821, making him a Gold Star Texan. Governor Abbott made him Admiral of the Texas Navy, and Portugal made him a knight. And he's still as humble as ever. Scott Holman, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John.
What if Hillary Clinton had been president? What would the consequences be?
I think it could possibly have been disastrous.
How so?
She wanted to keep the corporate rate at 35%, if not higher.
Okay.
She proposed lots of really bad tax ideas. She wanted a soda hike tax. She wanted a 25% national gun tax. She wanted to double the federal excise tax on guns. She wanted a 65% death tax, capital gains tax hike, which is the tax rate we use to entice foreign investors to come into this country.
Right.
And infuse our country with valuable capital that we need. Even Bill Clinton and President Obama wanted to lower the corporate tax rate. They realized what a mistake it was to raise it. When you look at the stock market, the S&P 500, for instance, it trades in a channel that goes up, it goes down, it advances, it retraces a little bit, advances and retraces, it traces. We're in an upward trend in the channel, and we're at the top of the channel at major resistance, which means we're due for a pullback. Had Hillary been elected, I think we would have not only pulled back, we would have broke through the bottom portion of that channel, which would have been a market crash. That was the most positive economic event around when Trump won, reducing regulations and reducing taxes.
Well, didn't he set a new stock market record too?
Oh, he did. He did indeed. He set records on a monthly basis.
Just by showing up, someone who's run successful multi-billion-dollar companies, our creditors went, oh, thank God.
Venezuela did the wrong thing. Cuba did the wrong thing. Most of the socialist countries do the wrong thing. And in the end, it's the leaders of those socialist governments and regimes that wind up becoming multi-billionaires and multi-millionaires.
Right.
The Castro family is worth hundreds of millions in Western dollars, while the rest of their country suffers and are penniless. It's funny thing is that Chavez's daughter is invested mostly in American dollars and in America. She's the richest woman in Venezuela with a net worth of over $4 billion. And he was on record saying he hated rich people.
Well, that's stunning considering that the rest of Venezuela is eating cardboard or each other right now just to survive.
Oh, I know. Their inflation rate right now is 25,000%. They barter to try to stay alive. They can't use currency over there. You have the political elites and the people that are supposed to be our mentors that are running the government encouraging this sort of behavior. It's a really, really bad sign. That's why I was so frightened if Hillary were to have won. I mean, it could have gone that way even more. All countries have borders, and all countries have border enforcement. In Mexico, if you were to cross their border illegally, it's a felony. You wind up in a Mexican prison. We do allow people to immigrate in this country. And like all countries, we are looking to try to get and attract the best and the brightest. But if you're someone who is in abject poverty, we're not looking for those kind of people right now.
Just to play devil's advocate for a second, the Statue of Liberty says, give me, you're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses yearning to be breathe free. Shouldn't we have a little compassion? I mean, isn't it the compassionate thing to do to totally bankrupt our country to save everyone else?
I give a great deal of money to charity every year, and I encourage everyone else to do so too. I'm pretty much against forced charity, but like they say, you can give a man a fish and feed him for a day, or you can teach a man to fish and feed him for life.
Here to give us his take on Trump derangement syndrome today is Sid Miller. Sid, welcome to the show.
Well, howdy, guys. How are y'all doing?
Just fine. How are you?
Doing great, thank you.
Well, I'm up here at Stephenville, Texas today at the ranch, and we had a cold front come through today. About 10 degrees cooler. It's only 102 today. We're feeling good.
Sid, you're known for being politically incorrect. Sometimes you get attacked by the liberal media because they say you're mean and you're insensitive. I know you think that paying $300 to cuddle with a cow is snowflake silliness, but you never wish anyone harm.
Harm anybody. I'm just using what I call little cowboy logic. I mean, come on, let's get real. I mean, this is Texas, right?
Well, it seems like they're so tolerant, they're tolerating intolerance, doesn't it?
They think it's just fine for Kaepernick and some other NFL players that express their position on the field, and Tim Tebow expresses his rights for being Christian. Well, that's taboo. You can't do that. People that came here were the Quakers and the Shakers and the Pilgrims, and people seeking a place to worship God freely, and that's the people that founded this country, founded on the freedom of religion, not freedom from religion.
There seems to be a war on Christianity. And even in the news today, there was an Ohio restaurant that was offering churches a 10% discount to anyone who brought their church bulletin in. And all of a sudden, they were just attacked by social media. In fact, they were even threatened with lawsuit by Freedom from Religion Foundation, suggesting that their offer was illegal. To me, that is just absolutely unheard of.
Let me get this straight. So this restaurant wanted to give somebody a good deal, and the liberals say that's a bad deal?
You summed it up perfectly.
There's a lot of violence right now all over the country, and the key people in the Democrat Party are encouraging it. And it could hit Texas soon in a big way, and we want to be prepared for it and know how to deal with it appropriately within the confines of the law, and also hopefully neutralize it with love, kindness, and dialogue. What do you recommend Texans do in those scenarios?
I try to live by this saying. I try to, remember it when I get into those type of situations. Never argue with an idiot. Just try not to get down to their level, because they're irrational. We've seen that with Whoopi Goldberg and others. Yelling and screaming obscenities and profanity.
Isn't that something with Whoopi? You saw Judge Janine. She says you're guilty of Trump derangement syndrome. So how does Whoopi respond with derangement?
With derangement, yelling and cursing and profanities.
That's showing conservatives, they're saying. What does this mean for representative democracy worldwide? I mean, what does this mean for wider Western civilization when the mother of parliamentary democracies tells its voters to sod off?
The British people have been betrayed, and they are very angry. We saw it on the streets of London yesterday, where there was protests about the imprisonment of someone called Tommy Robinson. There's actually a pro-President Trump demonstration as well, supporting him and welcoming him. And one of the unifying factors of many of these people are that they are concerned and feel betrayed, that the political elite in this country is ignoring them. And that is certainly happening. And these are actions which are supported by George Soros, who has been funding the pro-EU campaign within the United Kingdom, even though he doesn't live in the UK, he doesn't pay tax in the UK,
the arrogance
he's not a
of the man
voter
is
in the
breathtaking.
UK. But this individual, this shameless individual who has a conviction in France for insider trading, has been funding the pro-Remain in the EU campaign in the UK. And there is an elite that doesn't care for the interests of ordinary working people, and it actually despises them in many, many cases, and taking away their rights to govern themselves, which is why we had this referendum in the first place.
Daniel Miller is the author of a brand new book called Texit, Why and How Texas Will Leave the Union. Folks, why don't you welcome Daniel Miller to the show?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Dan, it's a pleasure. Why don't you tell us, number one bestseller on Amazon, do people, are they actually ready to support Texas independence?
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things that has been, in my mind, very surprising, especially as of late. I mean, let's be honest. The concept of Texit is far less offensive and controversial than Maxine Waters. So, we're definitely breaking ground here. But what we have seen literally in the 20 years that I have been engaged in advocacy for this issue is we've watched the support steadily grow. Back in the late 90s, you could probably put the supporters of Texas independence in one single room. And really, as the reaction against federal overreach has grown, and Texans have chafed under it, they've become less and less bashful about expressing it. In 2014, right around the time of the Scottish independence referendum, Reuters conducted a poll across all the states, But in particular, Texas results were quite astonishing, where you had 54% of Republicans, somewhere around half of independent voters, and 35% of Democrats say that they supported the idea of Texas leaving the Union and becoming an independent country.
Now, wait a minute.
So,
you mean that almost 40% of Democrats even were supporting this idea in 2014?
15% of Democrats. I mean, right around the height of, the Obama high.
Some of the talking heads have accused you guys of starting another civil war or creating the conditions for it. Usual fear-mongering, or it's the opposite extreme. You're dismissed offhand as a bunch of jokers. How do you respond to these kind of claims?
There's something about the opposition that love to live in the past. They love the 19th century when it comes to this particular issue. And what they do is they have forgotten that the world has continued spinning. History has continued to be written. And what we are seeing here in Texas is just this natural expression of about a 70 to 80 year period where the right of self-government began to achieve importance in people's lives.
Daniel, I've got to stop you there for a minute. I mean, Trump is president now. Everything's fine, right? I mean, shouldn't we just go back to the way things were before Barack?
Yeah, the idea that a single person in a single election is going to be able to solve the federal grievances is just as much fantasy as it is these opposition guys who believe that this is about refighting the Civil War.
So $20 trillion in debt, we can't get rid of that, you're saying?
Well, you're not going to be able to get rid of it. At the end of the day, Texans are sick and tired of being governed under 180,000 pages of federal laws, rules, and regulations administered by 2.5 million unelected bureaucrents.
Well, Daniel, we certainly appreciate your thoughts, and please tell people where they can buy your book.
Absolutely. The book is available right now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all major book retailers.
All right. Well, sir, you have a blessed rest of your Sunday. We have some Cajun Spice. He's the publisher and editor of The Hayride. Say hi, Scott McKay.
Hey, folks. How y'all doing today?
And, Scott, what brings you to Austin?
Well, just half vacation and half a little business. We're Louisiana-based, but we're exploring the possibilities of picking up some coverage of Texas politics. And,
well, I mean, Breitbart, Texas can't do it all, can
yeah,
it?
And we're typical conservative website. John, as you know, you've contributed some stuff to us recently.
Well, I'm privileged. Thank you.
We're very appreciative of that. So, just kind of checking out Austin, seeing the lay of the land.
Well, my mom was born in Calcasieu, so have some Louisiana ties. Our other guest today is Randall Selby. He's with the Selby team, Connect Realty. Randall is a millennial, and he's a great example of the change that's happening in this country. Randall, why don't you tell us what you got?
Among millennials, there's definitely a shift occurring. They're starting to see past the social craziness of the left, and they're starting to realize, hey, I can actually get a job now. In the congressional race 2 years ago, millennials preferred Democrats over Republicans 47 to 33%. It's now tied at 39% each.
That's pretty staggering, especially since with polls they always fudge them to favor the libs.
Yes.
So that even came out in those numbers.
And the biggest shift is among white millennial men, where now they're favoring Republicans by 9 percentage points in the congressional race.
Well, yeah, all that talk of white privilege and all that reverse racism definitely won't keep.
There's your walk-away movement right there. Now that we're seeing 4% economic growth as opposed to complete stagnation,
right.
Which was basically 8 years.
Which, I mean, they never did taste capitalism. They never got a real sense of it. Now they are.
Well, what they saw was student loans.
But Scott, Obamacare's still going to work. It's still going to come through. It's happening. It's in process.
I mean, I'm sure if you look around hard enough, you can find somebody that it'll work for.
Representative Shine, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm delighted to join you today, John, and look forward to our discussion.
You had quite a nice background in trade, and you had some thoughts on Trump's approach.
So I did a little research on tariffs, and I think it's important that we study history a little bit when we start talking about present-day things. And I'd like to point out to your listeners, if you don't mind, that America has a history of tariffs. In fact, America's de facto policy is one of protectionism, and that's not new policy at all. In fact, Alexander Hamilton, who was the U.S. Secretary of Treasury, actually sponsored the first tariff act for the United States back on July the 4th in 1789. The United States never really did adhere to free trade until after World War II. From 1871 to 1913, the average tariff in the United States was 38%. The gross national product for the United States during that 42-year period grew at an annual average rate of 4.3%. It was twice the pace of free trade in England and Europe, and it obviously well above the U.S. gross domestic product average for the 20th century.
Well, look, I've got some numbers here for you, too. U.S. tariffs have gone from 40% of the price of goods over the last 50 years in the U.S. to 5%. Over the same period, manufacturing as a share of our employment fell from 30 to 11%. Now, you know this, but, I mean, for average folks out there to hear that, folks, it does matter.
The international trade was tilted against American interests, like dumping Chinese steel. We had a confiscatory U.S. tax policy.
Russia quadrupled their revenues just by replacing their outmoded progressive tax system, which wasn't too different from ours, with a single rate.
When you no longer have competition, then you can obviously go to free trade.
We can and should protect vital industries where appropriate. And that's always worked. It worked for Harley-Davidson with Reagan. It works for Trump now with steel. Thank you so much for being on the show, Hugh. We hope we can have you back in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity, sir, and have a great day.
Well, the secret weapon for the Republican Party of Texas is the tens of thousands of amazing, dedicated folks that we have at the RPT. People who want the Republican Party to succeed, want our elected officials to succeed, and want to do whatever they can do to help make it happen. And we have tens of thousands of those people out there. And as free market guys, is just unleashing those people on making the difference they've always wanted to make.
But then that's the strength of you, is you let everyone genuinely have a voice. I noticed that a lot of folks had authentic debates on the floor that weren't stopped and that weren't prevented because we had someone there who was running things that actually believes in the tenets of the Republican Party.
Well, and that's the thing. If we are not afraid, we should never be afraid of open debate and being challenged, and certainly within our own party, to challenge what the best way is to fight for freedom, and the best way is to fight for opportunity, and the best way is to fight for justice.
Ideas aren't dangerous.
They are not. And that's at the end of the day, why does the party exist? Well, the party exists to advance our principles. I mean, we were founded to fight for freedom for the slaves. In Texas, we were founded to fight for the right to vote for the freedmen.
People forget the Republican Party passed the Civil Rights Act.
Exactly.
Both of them.
We were the party, and we were the party that the suffragettes all voted for, right? We have a long history of shared principles
of inclusion.
Of saying we care more that we both want better for all than whether you and I happen to currently be in the same clique. Won't you fly